composed myself.
Right, we calm down now.
Okay. There's a bit of an outtake
there.
Right. This is a beautiful pearlescent white version R Mitsubishi Colt imported from Japan.
Oh, I would imagine so.
I would imagine so. Yeah, so it's had a lot of work over the last, it's got to be the last couple of weeks to be fair.
So it's been a couple of weeks. It was booked in a couple of weeks ago to have a auto to manual conversion done because it's basically got like an old style gearbox in it where basically you put your foot down, it puts the revs on peak torque about 4,200 RPM, and it literally just pins those revs at that point, keeps the engine on peak torque, and the automatic box is almost like a sort of cone system where obviously it just slips down the cone, so the revs stay up and your speed increases and away it goes.
Well, that's certainly how it feels.
That's how it feels. I mean, people are saying that you've got a choice of gears on this gear selector when you can move it and do stuff, but there's very little input that you're getting from anything. It's a horrible gearbox, let's be honest. Customer decided he wanted to tune and he wanted to go manual. So we've used a lot of Colt CZT parts to convert this car to manual. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't quite as simple as I thought it was going to be, given the fact that they're the same or very, very similar platform. As regards the shell, obviously the outer pinnings of the body are slightly different, but the underneath would be the same. And obviously the engines and stuff are the same, but a lot of stuff did come with complications and things were different. So, I mean, to go into some detail, for example, we use a Colt CZT clutch and we use a Colt CZT brake pedal.
Yeah.
Now, the brake pedal fitted, no problem. The clutch pedal fitted to a point, basically on 2 location holes, 2 locations were out. The master cylinder for the clutch was 180 out, so the holes had to be re-drilled for that. Plus, obviously, cutting out a teardrop shape in the bulkhead, which is, the pattern was sort of already there, but obviously had to be cut out because this car obviously didn't have a clutch originally. We thought we were going to fit CZT master cylinder, which we couldn't. It didn't fit. It was 180 out in the hole, so we couldn't fit it. Then I thought I'll just use the reservoir bottle off the CZT to take the outtake, obviously to go to the master cylinder for the clutch. Couldn't use that because that didn't work, so then I had to drill and tap the original bottle and then obviously add a bit of pipe in. Use the CZT pipe to come across to the slave cylinder for the gear, for the push side of the hydraulic clutch. That seemed to all work, that was all good. We removed the original gearbox from the car, and then that's when we started finding some real parts that were different.
Yeah, sort of the thing. We knew the parts that we were going to need, but what we didn't factor for was the fact that when you take a clutch or a flywheel out of the CZT and you put in one back, all the bolts are there.
Yeah, I mean it was just a simple oversight.
So we we had a CZT flywheel, a CZT clutch. That's all great, but the bolts to put them on weren't there.
Yeah, weren't there. So obviously because the bolts were different for the flex plate and the torque converter and things like that, a lot of stuff didn't line up. So the backing plate for the engine was different. The starter motor was 180 degrees out, so we needed a CZT starter motor. Then we had to lengthen the wiring for the starter motor. The original gearbox had probably about 10 plugs on it. The CZT gearbox has 1 for reverse light, that's it.
We need the bottom part of the bell housing, didn't we?
We needed the bottom part of the bell housing that goes around. The sump was different between this and obviously the CZT, that and the manual. The dog bone mount was also different. The gearbox mount, we had to use a half of the version R mount and half of the CZT mount to make that work. We needed all the CZT gearbox bell housing bolts and the starter motor bolts because they were all different.
Big shout out to Connor Perry.
Yeah, that saved us. He was breaking one. Yeah. We needed starter motor bolts, as I said. We needed slave cylinder bolts. We needed flywheel bolts. We needed clutch bolts. I'm trying to think what else we needed. And I think that pretty much about summed it up. Then there was obviously some wiring to do on the top end of things, and obviously get it to obviously so that it would see that it was in park and it would start and things like that. So we had it running. Peter Davis took it away, did about 500 miles in it in literally one day. Came and picked it up on the Saturday morning, dropped it off on the Sunday morning, said he'd done 500 miles.
That's because he's committed.
That's dedication for you, because it ran over on the first set of jobs by about a week, and then it was booked back in to have the hybrid done and the map done, which is obviously what we've done the tail end of last week and this week.
But to map it, we needed the clutch bedding in.
Yeah, I needed the clutch bedding in to map it, so
he went Skegness, he went everywhere.
Yeah, so he went and obviously got some miles on it, which is great of him to do that. We've had it back, we've fitted a hybrid turbo, we've made sure obviously the exhaust's up to scratch, we've fitted a 3-port solenoid, we finished the next round of mods to get it working. He said he had some issues with some limp mode issues and a few other bits going on. We've not experienced any of that at the moment, but Dan's going to run it round now for a few days to see if we get any issues coming with the car. It's mapped up beautiful. I think it's done really well, and it's not the most powerful we've seen in the sense of the hybrid, but Peter drives this car, and when I say he drives it hard. He likes to do track days in it, he wants to do track days in it all the time. So what I've done is I've aired on the side of caution. We've mapped this car to 250 brake and 240 foot-pounds bang on.
Being conservative,
I could have got more top-end power out of this car, no question. I probably could have got it up to around the 270 mark, and I could have pushed it to its absolute limit at 250 foot-pounds. But I didn't see the point in doing that, given the fact that he wants to use this car and he's going to load it up and he wants to drive it hard. So we've kept the power down just slightly.
We've got some redundancy there.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of redundancy there. So hopefully that means that this is going to live a long and happy life at this stage. Obviously, if Peter wants to, forge it or wants to go further, then maybe we'll push on for that extra 20 brake and an extra 20 foot-pounds or whatever. But it's certainly not worth it for the amount of money and the time that you spent on this car and how lovely it is, to just force it for that extra.
Totally agree.
For that extra 10 brake horsepower.
So I think he's going to love it, and this will be the quickest it's ever been.
Oh, without question. I mean, with that box on it before, we see these generally dyno in stock form around the 130 to 140 mark, don't we? So, bearing in mind, if it was even at the top end of its scale at 140, you've almost doubled it. You put 110 horsepower extra in, so this should feel fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to potter about in it, put a few miles out. This is basically our shakedown. What am I going to do? Maybe 30 miles a day over the next 2 days?
Over the next couple of days.
But just a shakedown.
It's just literally for things like engine codes or anything that might pop up or come up that we can still
System
deal with.
slightly differently, you see, to the Ecutek software. So we just got to make sure that we don't get any codes pop up that we weren't aware of. And the only way to do that is to drive it and let it go. Yeah, let it go through its paces and see what comes back. But yeah, really happy with it. It looks great, sounds great.
Yeah.
So
right, we'll have a look at the graph and we'll get a road test on it.
Road test. Okay, so there we go. So there is the finished article. It was an auto before, so it never really ran on the dyno. But that's looking pretty impressive for a curve. And we finish on 250 brake horsepower and 239 foot-pound of torque, keeping that torque down below the threshold, what we consider safe. So fingers crossed that'll do the job, won't it, Rich?
I hope so.
Richard's trying to adjust the seat.
Oh, there it goes. Felt like I was sort of sitting up like a dog begging for a biscuit.
I could do with a biscuit. Right, so we're on a little test drive. I can barely hold the camera. So I'm just going to flip the camera around so you can see what we're actually doing. Okay, so maiden voyage after we've mapped it. I'm glad that the weather's a little bit better than it has been. It was belting it down earlier. Storm Franklin or something. There's the Nuneaton drag strip. So out and about in Nuneaton on a test run, making sure that it's behaving on the road as it behaved on the dyno, which it currently is, isn't it, Rich?
Seems to be. A few rattles that I couldn't deal with, but
well, that's for Peter to sort out.
yeah. Yeah, the fuel gauge is distinctly saying nothing now.
Perhaps that's actually accurate. I've not got my wallet on me either, man.
Oh no, it's come back a bit now. It's come off the roundabout. We go round the roundabout the other way, we'll get more fuel.
Oh really?
Yeah.
It will go further if we go.
Yeah.
If the journey's predominantly to the left.
Yeah.
There's just too much traffic in there to do anything.
It's a nightmare, isn't
enjoyed working on this car, ain't you, mate?